Okay.
Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, I would like to call the Administration Committee meeting to order. Roll call, present, John Marshall and myself from the committee, and Eric Treaster, Mike Cherry, David Mulo from Pumpkin Hill Road, and Roxanne Marr, Administrative Assistant to the Town Council. Are there any citizens who wish to speak to the group?
This is Eric Treaster. Yes, I would. Thank you.
Okay,
Can you hear me all right?
yes.
And yes,
The,
Dave Marlowe.
Okay, wait, Dave, Eric is speaking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
yeah, thank you. One is a brief question, and the other one I'd like to speak a little bit about the short-term rental issue that's on the agenda. It's my understanding that Founders Preserve, the 94, 95 acres that the town citizens voted to give to Avalonia, that the conveyance of title has not yet taken place. And I was wondering if anyone happens to know what the reason for that is. I'm just curious.
I do not know the answer to that, but we can certainly find out.
Okay.
Mike Cherry, would you know the answer to that?
No, I don't, but I think it would probably rest more with Land Use Planning and Public Works Committee. They may know where they are in the process.
Did we have the 824 review on that conveyance?
I believe we did that before the vote.
Before the vote, okay. Now, the real reason I'm here this evening is the short-term rental, and I suspect everybody else is here for the similar reason.
Mhm.
As you know, I'm generally opposed to commercial uses in residential districts. My philosophy is that the town should do everything possible to protect residential neighborhoods. And I think we've had enough time with the short-term rentals as an experiment to show that almost half of them are disasters or near disasters as far as the neighbors are concerned. I would like to suggest two things. Mike may disagree with me. We often disagree, which is part of the fun of life. But I would like to suggest that we ban them. And if that's politically undoable, that we at least require that they be hosted. A hosted short-term rental is very similar to a rooming house. And rooming houses have been allowed in Ledyard forever. And there's virtually never a problem with a rooming house. And a hosted STR would be almost the same as a rooming house with the owner of the home present at all times. If they are banned, it would be consistent with the state's new guidance to provide more housing. The state changed its zoning enabling statutes to mandate that second dwellings, auxiliary dwelling units, be allowed on virtually any residential lot in the side yard or in the rear yard, unless the zoning commission votes to opt out of that mandate. So far, there's been no indication on the part of the Planning and Zoning Commission to opt out, and I don't know what its intentions are. I'm going to urge that they do opt out. We'll see what happens. But the idea of short-term rentals consuming valuable homes, which reduces the supply of homes, which increases the cost of housing, is in direct conflict with the marching orders from the state, which is to do everything possible to provide more housing. So I would argue that they be banned if possible, if politically possible, to protect neighborhoods. If that's not possible, that they be in the form of hosted short-term rentals. And we'll see what the other comments are this evening on the subject, but that's my recommendation. Also, I recommend that the enforcement mechanism be on zoning rather than as a town ordinance. Zoning has a well-established enforcement mechanism. It's got real teeth to it if necessary. It's relatively fast, and I think it will work. In my opinion, the current zoning regulations do not allow short-term rentals, and I think all you have to do is let the town ordinance expire, let the town ordinance on short-term rentals expire, and zoning would kick in. And if the decision is so made, because it's not a listed use and it's not an accessory use as the word accessory use is defined, which is a very precise definition, I think it's obvious that short-term rentals are not allowed in Ledyards. So just my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mulo, would you like to say something on that subject?
Yes, I would love to show a bunch of stuff on that subject. Okay, so we're dealing with our neighbor on the 430 Pumpkin Hill Road and at 428 Pumpkin Hill Road, a property owned by Chad, what's his last, I forget his last name off the top of my head. But anyway, so he informed me, my neighbor, he was telling me, in fact, he gave me a tour of his house and showed me how he refurbed the house and did this wonderful smart house that you can talk to Google and make any of the lights on.
Mr. Mulo, we cannot understand you. You're kind of muffled.
Sound like you're underwater.
Am I better now?
Dave, if you could turn your volume down a little bit that you're projecting, I think that might help.
Oh, okay. Okay, threw my volume down. Okay. Is that better?
I will keep talking and we'll see.
Okay. All right. So we're dealing with a Airbnb at 428 Pumpkin Hill Road. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, and he gave me a tour of his house and showed me how wonderful the house was and how he set it up to be a smart home with Google and we talked to Google to get lights on and all that kind of stuff, which is great and wonderful. But he said that he planned on starting the following weekend to renting it out through the Airbnb website. So he has continued to rent out this property from the first weekend in April all the way up to the present time, which is 27 weekends. And he knows about the ordinance. He put in an application. His application is still pending. But every single weekend, we have observed many violations to the code. And there's really no way to enforce it. If you say, okay, we're not going to give you a permit, he'll continue to rent it without a permit. If we make unhosted Airbnbs or short-term rentals illegal, he'll probably continue to do it regardless. So we're concerned, we have grandchildren who come over and play in our yard on weekends, and we're concerned because, as he explained to me, when a person rents through Airbnb, all they do is they know the name of the person who's paying and that they're getting paid. They have no idea how many people he's bringing, if it's going to be multi-families. But I would say majority of the weekends, except maybe the exception of 3 or 4 weekends, he has had a crowd of people there. One weekend we've counted as many as 12 cars in the driveway. 8 another weekend we've seen like 8 or 9 men there. Hooting and hollering and having a great old time till 2 a.m. It's like on the weekends. And I had talked with the former zoning enforcement official, Eric, about Kyle about he was dealing with Chad at the time, and he told him to stop renting because he hasn't been approved and he had building code violations he had to fix, and so it wasn't even going to be looked at until he got all those violations fixed. But yet he continues to rent it weekend after weekend with hordes of people there, multiple families, lots of cars, and we're kind of fed up, and we feel a lot of grandkids go out and play in the yard that they're not safe because our back of our property is completely visible from the front of his house, even though he claims his place is private. But it's all wide open to our place. We can see who comes and goes, and the access road, the constant cars up and down the access road for the weekend. And so not only are we fed up with all of that, he's violating he's not approved, he doesn't have a permit, and he's violating many of the provisions. He's violating the parking, he's violating the usage of the unit. He's violating there being several families there. And, you know, the noise hasn't been real excessive. If you go in the house and shut the door and turn the air conditioner on, you don't hear anything. But you know, if you do go outside, you can hear them carrying on, talking loud, and having a good old. And then also, there's been, and they've been holding parties there. In fact, one person who wrote a write-up on staying there, did a review. She stated, "Oh, it was a wonderful place to have our bachelorette party."
Yeah.
So that's definitely against not only Airbnb's policy, it's also against the ordinance. And so, and then so all the people staying there, except who pays, are complete perfect strangers. Nobody knows who they are, what their name is, where they're from, what car belongs to them. All you know is the person who's paying for the rental. And so if it was a hosted Airbnb or a hosted short-term rental, then he would have to see the guests. The guests would know that another human being knows who they are. And they would be less likely to carry on or do something, nefarious. People without realize that their identities are not known are more likely to do something nefarious than if everybody knew who they were. So in a hotel, you have to give your automotive registration number. You have to give your name, address, where you're from, along with your financial credit. And they ask you how many people are going to be there. So they keep tabs on who's renting rooms in their hotel. At this Airbnb, it's all done online, and they never see the people staying there. Never see Chad face to face, and he never sees any of them. So I think it's a very unsafe public safety issue, unsafe situation for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mulo.
All righty.
Ms.
Yeah,
Jim
I'd
Howard.
like to go, Mary.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Okay. So I have three short points. I hope they're short. The first one is it's not really unexpected. The same people who don't get a permit are also disregarding the voluntary compliance letters that went out. My understanding is that that multiple owners have disregarded these compliances. I can speak to the one at Seska Drive, though. The letter went out on August 25th, and in the 49 days since the letter went out, they have had guests occupy the house 29 of the days. 21 of those were in the first 30 days, which, as I understand, is the grace period for the voluntary compliance. The last 8 have been in the 19 days since the end of the grace period, including this past weekend. My understanding is that this has moved to the next level, and maybe we'll hear a bit more about that from Mike later. The second point is that we've had much discussion about sunsetting the ordinance in February, end of February, and that we need to wait until then to let it sunset or replace it. That's not necessarily the case. The town council, the charter says the town council can make or rescind ordinances at any time. So it's possible for you to end this ordinance even tomorrow, today. And as Eric said, then put this back in the zoning hands where it ought to rightfully be. I think we're going to hear a little bit more about this later as well. But my final comment is we're 2.5 weeks from Halloween. And this is going to be a total tragedy waiting to happen if you've got a whole bunch of drunks in these houses driving around between 7 and 9 o'clock at night when these kids are all walking up and down the streets trick-or-treating. Especially, I can speak specifically for our neighborhood. Seska Drive, Seabury Drive, and Lynn Drive is sort of a closed community. There are only 2 ways in. Most of the residents here have their cars in their garages somewhere around 5 o'clock on Halloween, and they don't go out between 5 and 9. So you don't have a whole host of people driving up and down the roads while the kids are walking up and down the roads trick-or-treating, running across the streets, how 5-7-year-olds are with that. If you add to that mix anything that like what happened here on Labor Day, where you've got 14 cars up and down the road, 30 drunk people all driving around, it's just a tragedy waiting to happen. I'm hoping that we can somehow proactively prevent that rather than just wait and hope it doesn't happen. Anyway, that's what I have to say for today. I'll yield back.
Okay, Mike, do you want to respond to
It,
some of these or tell them what you as the
I can.
zoning, not zoning, but the ordinance enforcement person?
I can. Is anybody else willing to want to address short-term rentals first?
I don't see anybody else.
It looks like Walter had his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I don't.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for everybody for listening on what's been going on here. I just had a couple of other points that I've kind of noticed here, and I'm just trying to understand maybe a little bit better where the ordinance stops and maybe planning and zoning really fits in. In the case of
Say
our
your name.
neighborhood, I'm sorry.
We need your name and address.
Oh, my name is Walter Guth. I'm at 18 Eska Drive in Ledyard.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much. I'm just kind of wondering where planning and zoning might take over. We've had our rental on our house street over here where they were advertising originally 5 bedrooms, then 4 was the last one I looked at. But our taxes over there and the assessments are based upon 3. So that even goes way beyond what this ordinance was originally intended for. They're actually advertising it to be more than just what the house is on itself. So that's one of the things. And the other one I'm kind of wondering is, a lot of the houses here, we have septic and well systems. In our particular street here, we do, although there's community throughout portions of our neighborhood. But if these things are overtaxed, we got to be kind of careful there too, because now we've got other potential issues that other neighbors might have if their septic systems are overtaxed over there for what's rated, because in 75 feet or so, you might have a well that's is currently there. And I don't know how far it would be before that might end up polluting that well, and then you've got other issues involved. Also, as one last thing, is where these are like septic and well systems, if this is being treated more as short-term rentals, which could be multiple families, multiple.
We lost your audio, Ms. Walker. I don't know if you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
Oh, here he is.
He looks frozen.
Issue.
Yeah.
We have some new neighbors directly across the street that don't even know what's going on here yet.
Yeah.
My name is Deborah Swanson Guth. I'm Walter's wife from 18 Eska Drive. And I was going to jump in on what Jim had said about Halloween trick-or-treating. As a teacher from over 28 years, that makes me extremely nervous with all these extra people going around the neighborhood. And another problem that we have with where the house is on Eska Drive, the bus stop for the kids is only 1 house away. Luckily, most of these people have been gone by Monday morning, but not always. And I don't like the fact that we have people in the neighborhood that could be going by these kids at the bus stop, even though there usually are parents out there. But the middle school and high schoolers, there's not always parents out there because it's not, they're older, they get home earlier, their parents don't get home, until later. The elementary school kids, there's usually somebody out there. I don't like the fact that it's too close to the bus stop, and I don't like the fact that these people are here anyway, but especially with the Halloween coming up, it's just too dangerous.
I have a question, Mr. Guth. You mentioned you have wells on Eska Drive. I thought you had
Correct.
municipal water from southeast.
On Seabury Avenue, it's municipal water or community water, actually, from a well. But Jim can verify this, but we both have wells on our property as well as septic systems.
Yeah, Eska
The
Drive,
entire street is this
you
way.
have
Yeah,
individual wells on Eska.
I live on Lynn Drive and we have community water from the southeastern
Yeah,
Connecticut.
Mary,
Water
Lynn and Seabury both have the community water and
Okay.
I think community sewer as well. When they put in Eska Drive, they
No.
didn't extend that to there. So we all have wells.
Okay,
And that every time when we lose power, besides power, we don't have water on Eska Drive.
That's the hard part.
FYI.
do you want to,
Right, yeah.
okay, just also to answer Mr. Treaster, to my knowledge, we only have 10 Airbnbs. 5 are non-compliant and 5 are compliant. 2 of the 5 are hosted. So go ahead. All right. That's what we know.
All right, so if I could, Mary, it's Mike Cherry.
Sure. go ahead.
I hear what everybody's saying. I thank you for your comments. If you look at the last set of minutes, the last agenda, we addressed a bunch of short-term rentals. Note that the ones we were discussing were all unpermitted. As Dave pointed out, both in his email and in his comments tonight, the one on Pumpkin Hill is still unpermitted. He couldn't get permitted. People worry about wells and septic. To get the permit, you have to have your water tested and you have to inspect your septic system annually. So if you want to be a short-term rental, we ask you to maintain those things. A lot of people in town, from my experience, don't even realize they're on a septic system and they've lived in their house for 10 or 12 years. So it could be problematic for sure. I talked to our land use attorney this afternoon. My problem is the ordinance doesn't have a stick. I can send a letter, I can threaten, but nothing's there. And I said, well, we're kicking around maybe making it part of zoning. He recommended strongly against that. He said the right thing to do, in his opinion, from what he's seen, is marry our short-term rental ordinance 300-30 with our citation ordinance 300-09. So we have a citation ordinance that covers zoning and wetlands. He recommends adding a section for short-term rentals. All we can do right now is try and take people to court because they didn't follow the ordinance. And John and I have had some offline discussions about, okay, how much does that cost? Where does it take us? My experience with taking people to court on a zoning issue has been poor in our town. That lasts for a long time. You don't get the resolution you would hope for. And I think, marrying our citation thing and putting some fines in there would help. Because right now, if somebody doesn't have a permit, I can't take their permit away. They don't have one. If they don't have a permit, they didn't have the fire marshal look for smoke detectors. They never got their water sampled. They never inspected their septic system, and all the things you're talking about can be problematic. So I wouldn't sunset the ordinance. I'd put some teeth in it. I'd put a stick in there for the enforcement official to go out and enforce the ordinance. Because right now, I can write a letter, and Jim has told us what happens to the letters. Matter of fact, Jim can, offline, if you ask Jim, did they get the letter, he can testify to the fact that not only did they get the letter, so did all their renters. So, I mean, that's what I'm hearing from our attorney. And short of sending another letter, there's not a lot to do without commencing civil action. And under what statute do I commence civil action? I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Treaster that our zoning regulations prohibit it. The argument for the other side would be it's a residence. I'm using it as a residence. It's even it talks about it in the ordinance as being a residence. I know he doesn't agree. He's not in a position where he would have to enforce it. I am. And I would gladly look for anybody like a full-time job as the enforcement official in Ledyard. I'm sitting in until we can find somebody. So,
Well, Mike, the problem with what you're proposing is it all on the weekend when the town hall is closed and you're not on the payroll.
absolutely. That was in your email too, that most of the problems start Thursday night and they're done by Monday morning.
Right.
Okay, why don't we, Mike, look into the recommendation of the attorney
Okay.
to marry the ordinance with the citation ordinance and see how that works.
And I'll enlist Eric's help. He helped write that citation ordinance, so he's very familiar with it.
For what it's worth, I wore the CEO's hat for a few weeks several years ago, and I will never, ever do it again.
This was supposed to be short term. I'm starting to panic because nobody's applying.
Right. And I volunteered for it, which made it worse. So I had no excuse. the a quick rebuttal to your comment, Mike. I truly believe that if you issue a cease and desist order, which a violation of is a felony, that it will get their attention, and 99 times out of 100, the activity will come to a screeching halt
The
instantly.
cease and
But it-
desist order is written, you are ordered to cease and desist the following activity, which is in violation of this section of the zoning regs.
Right, that's how come it has to, that
What section?
is an unlisted use.
They'll say it's residential.
It's a hotel, it's a motel, it's a bed and breakfast, it's whatever
People
you
will
want.
argue against
but-
that, Derek.
but
So
it's
I'll
commercial
go
interest.
investigate what our land use attorney
Right, right.
recommended for a couple
Yeah, I-
reasons. One,
I
when we
understand.
end up in court, he's the one that has to defend us.
Right, right.
Right.
I understand. And it would be worth a phone call to Carl. However, on the other side of the coin, I agree with, I forgot who it was, but somebody said that the town council has the authority to make changes in ordinances, withdraw them, modify them, and so forth at any time. I agree with that completely. And I think if you do decide to retain the ordinance, I hope you don't. I'd like to see it prohibited. I don't think it's fair to the neighbors to have commercial activities next door. I think it's fundamentally unfair. And I think the taxpayers and the residents and the neighbors, I think their rights should take priority over business activities in residential districts. If the house is in a design district, commercial design district, fine, have short-term rentals. But if it's in an R20, R40, or R60 district, no, thank you. It's not. That's a 3-day rental weekend is not a residence. People do not get their mail there. They don't get their driver's licenses there. It's not a residence. And I think that argument could be made easily. But if the decision is made that the town wants to go forward with this, with this impact on the neighbors, change the ordinance, put in the citation. It's easy to do, but at the same time, let's make them all hosted. All right, that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I think we have enough information now, and Mike, hopefully you can proceed with,
you.
tell us
Yeah,
what.
and if the council makes the decision, I think it's the council's decision on how to go forward. But if the council decides to stay with the ordinance or to modify it and modify it quickly, I'll be happy to contribute into the writing of it so that the attorneys can look at it later, if that would be helpful. But you know, it's the first step, I think, is up to the council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'd be
all.
happy to help as well in the drafting.
Okay,
Yeah, Jim, I want to thank you for your write-up that I saw from the last meeting, and Dave, your email helped a lot too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
okay. So let's continue with the meeting. Under old business, or rather, we're up to new business.
Wait, Mary, you got to approve the minutes.
I forgot that. Okay. I make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes of September 8th, 2021.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're on to new business. I make a motion to recommend the town council appoint Ms. Catherine Mild, a Democrat, 185 Spicer Hill Road, to the Senior Citizens Commission for a 2-year term ending December the 9th, 2022, to fill a vacancy left by Mr. Gary K. Harding.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, none, motion carries. All right, John, you want to do the second?
Yeah, so I'm gonna move my screen down here real quick.
Sure.
Motion to reappoint the following members to the Library Commission for a 2-year term ending November 7th, 2023. Mr. John Bullock, unaffiliated, 14 Monticello Drive, Gales Ferry. Miss Ellen Granger, Democrat, 15 Bittersweet Drive, Gales Ferry. Miss Barbara Candler, Democrat, 3 Goulart Road, Ledyard. And Ms. Elizabeth Roomery, Democrat, 2 Bluff Road, Gales Ferry.
Second, All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will recommend those to the town council. Okay, I make a motion to recommend the town council reappoint Mr. William Barnes, a Republican, who lives at 1 Spruce Street, to the Historic District Commission for a 5-year term ending December the 4th, 2026.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we did not, Mr. Hosey approached Roxanne and wanted to have his name to be considered for the Permanent Municipal Building Committee. Since he is an unaffiliated voter, there is no recommendation from either party. But I would recommend the town council appoint Mr. Hosey, an unaffiliated, to 2 Lucienne Way, to the Permanent Municipal Building Committee to complete a 3-year term ending March 26th, 2024, filling a vacancy left by Mr. Shuttleworth.
I'll second that. He's gonna make a fine addition to the committee.
Okay, good. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Any other, Roxanne told me that Mike Cherry was coming and we were going to start discussing cannabis.
I can. And it's a matter more of getting you some references.
Okay, I did, she did send me a copy of the law, and also from Connecticut Conference on Municipalities, an article called "In the Weeds with a New Law."
That's a good article. The law is the last part of the CCM report.
Mhm.
Points out that this law is not simple to read. It's over 300 pages. It
Mhm.
covers all kinds of different things.
Mhm.
I would recommend, if you're interested in what the law says, pull down the analysis from OLR for the joint bill. And
Right.
that's available on the CGA website under 21-1's Public Act. You should also have a listing that came by way of Ledyard Health District that was provided to the Ledyard Prevention Coalition that shows what different towns are doing as far as bans or moratorium. That's interesting reading. And if you didn't get it, Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments in August provided a write-up from Justin LaFountain on municipal obligations related to the passage of Public Act 21-1.
Mhm.
That's a little bit easier reading than the ordinance itself.
Right. Right. But I think the big decision before we do, go any further is, does the town want to have a retail establishment selling cannabis?
I don't know how you would find out other than put it on a ballot. It's too late to put it on the November ballot.
Right.
Uh,
And 60 days before a regular election, which would take us out to the
Well,
middle
but
of next year.
But that was, if somebody wants to get 10% of the electorate together and write a petition to put it on the ballot, it would go on a normal ballot, which would be November. But I don't think anything precludes the town council from taking that same question that may have been done by petition and saying, we want to make that question part of our budget referendum in the spring.
Mhm. Could be, right.
I'm not sure, but I would recommend that. Now, meantime, tomorrow night, Planning and Zoning Commission intends to start a discussion on whether we should have a moratorium.
Okay.
Right now, there are no regulations coming from the state. They don't expect to have them until the
Right.
spring. The only people that can do anything now are those that have a medical license. They can modify their medical license.
Mhm.
But for new licenses for 2 categories, retail seller and micro cultivator, I think is the other term.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's no regulations yet, and that will probably be the end of next year before anything happens.
Right.
So I think the safe thing to do in the meantime is let the Planning and Zoning Commission know what you think about a moratorium. the way the law is written, it requires something in our zoning regs to cover it. It requires a special permit. By the way the law is written, must be a special permit
Mhm.
for those two categories. So that requires us to change the regs. If we don't change the regs and we want to say, well, you can do it the same as liquor stores, I don't know that anybody in town would be happy with that, because I don't hear anybody happy with the way the state does liquor stores.
Right.
Um,
But we are, according to the law, we are only allowed one retail establishment.
correct, correct.
So
Now-
I don't know how many people would be applying, and I think it's fairly expensive
It is.
to get a
It-
permit.
It
So
could
I
be
don't
up to
know.
$1 million. But,
Right.
you know, the other side of it is, just like people drive to Groton and Montville and other places to buy groceries at Aldi's or Stop and Shop or Super Walmart, if people want to partake in marijuana, they can drive to get it and bring it back. So I think first and foremost, the council needs to proceed with what do we mean about where it can be used, and make it clear to people that I think your decision was, we already prohibit smoking in all public places. So we don't need to add anything. You can't smoke there already. Well, we need to make sure people understand those rules apply.
Right. Well, the Parks and Rec was going to change some of the signs that says no smoking would include cannabis too,
Yeah.
so that everybody would know.
But, you know, I think at this point, we're in an education phase.
Mhm.
Teach people what's there. And as I've said all along, this is not a pot of money. This creates social problems that need to be dealt with, and social problems, to deal with them, you have to hire experts. Experts cost money. So any thought that the state's going to be flush with all kinds of money because they're selling cannabis probably isn't going to happen. Anecdotally, my siblings who live in other states tell me that partially what happened is the state taxes the hell out of legal marijuana. And that helps the guy on the street corner who's selling it illegally. He gets a bigger market because his doesn't cost as much. Unintended consequences are always interesting.
Right.
So I think if admin would take on, or at least sponsor an information campaign, maybe with Ledyard Prevention Coalition, I think they're very much against it. So maybe somebody more neutral would be better.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But I
But
think that's the problem now. We need to educate the public. So if we do put it on the ballot, Stonington put it on their ballot and expected that it would be overwhelmingly
Down, right.
shot down, and it was
Right.
approved.
Right. 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 Okay. Well, we'll see what planning and zoning says tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then we'll consider, having maybe some informational
Yeah.
session. Okay.
Well, and there's always the one with the Canadian policeman stopping the car. I'll send you the YouTube link. They were stopped at a stop sign and he wanted to know why they'd been there a half hour. And the guy said, "We're waiting for the sign to turn green." They were not quite in their right mind.
Yeah, I
Right.
saw that video, Mike. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, I thank all of you for coming and expressing your concerns about the ordinance, and we'll continue to work on that. The people who are permitted seem very happy with, their circumstances. But again, they're following the rules and they know what the rules are.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything else, John?
No, I think it's all been said. I do agree with Eric on that one matter. I think that if we are gonna have SDRs, it should be in a commercial zone and hosted. And to the gentleman that's concerned about the septic systems polluting the wells, typically when a septic system fails, it just stops working. And you notice it in the house before it contaminates long before it contaminates the wells. So that's really, I understand your concern, but I hope that puts you at ease a little bit. And that's about it for now.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. We appreciate the input. Okay, see you, John and Roxanne, in a few minutes for the
Alright.
town council meeting.
Motion,
That's at 7, right?
Yes,
yeah,
Thanks.
okay. So we adjourn at 6:10.